Come Orizzonte is a piece that I wrote in 2024 that basically explains or uses many of the techniques and ideas that we have encountered in this course on music complexity, and kind of represents my aesthetics of how these ideas of complexity and networks and musical structures expand into the aesthetics of a composition. In practice, what we are witnessing here is the emergence of a musical piece out of all these components that we have explored and explained in the course of these lectures. In the program notes, I write that Come un Orizzonte, that in English would be like a horizon, plays as a counterpoint to the saraband of the second suite for solo cello of Johann Sebastian Bach, and exploits the geometrical structure of the saraband to generate and determine the pitch and rhythmic space that the piece explores. The piece is indeed built as an ideal continuation of the saraband, and in fact, the whole performance starts with the cellist playing the saraband itself, in this case my good friend and amazing performer Colin Stokes. And slowly, towards the end, the piece kind of morphs into my interpretation and re-elaboration of it that manifests itself into all the new ideas that are generating from the piece. But to look at the structure of the actual piece, here you see the score for the saraband from Johann Sebastian Bach. And here is the representation of it as a network. As you remember, we introduced this concept a few units ago, and what you are seeing here is the unraveling, if you want, of the piece in terms of its pitch structure and harmonic progressions. Out of this, I have extracted 5 different sub-networks, each of them containing a progression of pitches of chords that form the 5 different units or movements of Come un Orizzonte. Here you see the structure of the first movement with my handwritten annotation that should give you an idea of my creative process in the use of this network approach to composition. Each node is associated with a particular gesture, and the same for all the transitions, so each link is also associated with a particular performance technique. Combined, they present a compositional design of each movement. When we translate this into a score, this is how this section looks like. And this is the beginning of the piece that you can hear in this video. The second section is more minimalistic in a way, and again, each section is kind of associated with a particular musical gesture. The first and the last sections are the more linear of the different movements, and they play with the background of lighter electronic sounds. In other movements, this interplay between the cello and the electronic part becomes more relevant, in the sense that the electronic part takes an important role, as it is the case, for instance, in the second movement here, where the whole musical idea kind of revolves around the gesture of harmonics. You can hear the harmonics both in the fixed media part and in the cello performance. This is the score that corresponds to this section, and you see that in this case I'm not using notation, but I'm actually giving instructions to the performer to follow and play with the electronics part. The third section is a more elaborate one. It's very much composed and is based on this idea of again creating a tighter interplay between the cello and the electronics. This time the cello has a dominant role in the use of a particular technique that is called scordatura, where the cellist progressively detunes the instrument one string at a time and plays with the harmonic relationship that develops between the playing on one of the strings with the accompaniment of the other one that has been detuned. The score for this section is here.
The collaboration on Orizzonte started early. Marco requested a set of, or a library of samples, mostly of upper partial harmonics, some pizzicato, sort of a high-pitched material that forms the horizon of this piece, this sort of continuous, brittle, icy, distant line. And I sent him a whole bunch of stuff, some multiphonics and some, sort of like 9th through 15th partial harmonics. And then a couple months later, actually even sooner probably, he had the first version of the score, and we met and we went through some of the sounds. We looked through especially some of the live processing, how it affected the cello line. Cello's not so easy to process live. It's hard to get enough dry signal, and then to hear enough of the affected, the wet signal before getting too much, feedback or whatever other problems we might have. And we workshopped the incredible third movement with the scordatura, the changing scordatura throughout the movement.
The fourth section is again one where there is a strong interplay between the cello and the electronics part. Here, the fixed media that plays as a background or actually as a companion in a duet with the cello is actually based on a generative model that I have developed using an artificial neural network and the recordings of Colin playing the saraband. So here, the material of the saraband is not used just for the structural information about the pitch space, but also as a dialogue, an interpretation of the original piece that is now mediated by a generative model. Again, the score here is just an instruction set. The cellist plays pizzicato notes in response of the fixed media part. The fifth and last movement has a more elaborated harmonic and pitch structure that goes back in a way to the same form of the first movement. It completes the arc of this performance and of this piece. And it's the one where the cellist explores a larger space of pitch with respect to the previous movements. The score for it resembles the score of the first movement, and it brings the piece to a conclusion. It plays again with the electronics background that accompanies the whole piece from the beginning to the end. From a technical standpoint, Orizzonte blends together all the techniques that I have used as a composer. There is a live musical part, a score that the performer uses for their interpretation. But there is also a media score, there is a Python code that controls various aspects of both the cello performance and the live electronics. The score is both interactive and generative. Through the interaction between the Python code and the digital audio workstation like Ableton Live, it incorporates different effects and different ways of manipulating the electronics. And at the core of all this is the music network library that I've already introduced in one of the previous units. For the full performance of the piece, and without my voice and my comments, I encourage you to watch the video of the full concert, so not just this piece, but the whole performance of this program that I mentioned, that we call Traces of the Imaginary. It is a full program for cello and electronics where the new music pieces of various composers are embedded into the structure of the second suite for solo cello in D minor by Johann Sebastian Bach. Now, I hope that with this exploration of this particular piece, you had a glimpse on why I have been doing all this, and how I take all these ideas of complexity and networks and transform them into an aesthetic product, a composition. And actually, when I started all this, this study and this developing this idea, my main motivation for doing so was to design a new way or a new system for composing new music. My initial intent was not to end up with all these ideas of analysis and complexity and more kind of scientific approach to music, but it was really motivated by a creative effort. So I hope that at the end of this course, you will feel empowered to use these similar techniques and the tools that I've been explaining and have been developing for composition based on all these ideas of networks and complexity in your own creative process. Now you have the tools, you have the ideas, and I hope that you will find these tools useful for designing compositional frameworks for your new compositions.